There are secrets hidden in the pages of the Bible that few dare to uncover. Stories that, at first glance, seem to belong to the realm of ancient myths and legends, but which in reality carry deep and chilling truths. Have you ever wondered about the mysteries that the greatest scholars prefer to avoid, those that cause more unease than comfort? Today, you will be taken to a place where answers do not come easily, a place where the spiritual and the physical intertwine in mysterious ways. We are about to lift a hidden veil that covers some of the most disturbing and shocking secrets of Scripture. The fall of the angels, the rebels of heaven. But is it just an ancient story or something that still reverberates in our lives to this day? Get ready, because what you are about to discover is not just a story. It is a revelation. A revelation that can forever change the way you see the world around you, the spiritual and the physical, the visible and the invisible. Are you ready to see beyond what meets the eye? Are you prepared to question what you've always believed to be true? Because today, we're going to explore what few dare even mention, and what you'll discover could change the way you view the spiritual world forever. Today, we delve into the shadows of an ancient heavenly rebellion, a fall that changed the destiny of not only the angels, but also humanity. What really happened when Lucifer, the bearer of light, defied the Creator and took with him a third of the heavenly armies? Imagine the moment, a being of glory and splendor, overflowing with power and beauty, turning against the very order of heaven. But why? Pride? Ambition? Or was there something deeper at work, something that would affect not only the spiritual realm, but the earth itself? In this video, we'll delve into the mysteries surrounding this fall. You'll discover how this rebellion echoes through the ages, shaping the course of history and influencing our world to this day. We will discuss the fallen angels and their disturbing connection to humanity, raising questions that challenge the most common interpretations of Scripture. You are about to be confronted with answers that will surprise you. Perhaps even with secrets that challenge everything you have ever heard about good and evil. And as this journey unfolds before your eyes, prepare to discover not only what happened, but why, and how it will impact your life and the future of the world as we know it. So stay tuned. Every detail we explore from now on could be the key to understanding a much greater and deeper truth. Now, to truly understand the depth of this mystery, we need to go back to Scripture. There, hidden between the lines, we find powerful clues to the fall of Lucifer and what it meant for the world. In Isaiah 14, we read of the rebellion of a being who dared to exalt himself above the stars of God, who desired to ascend to the throne of the Most High. Instead, he was cast into the depths, cast down to the realm of the dead. Ezekiel 28 offers us another vision. Here, the prophet describes a being perfect in beauty and wisdom, covered in precious stones, walking among sacred flames. This angel was no ordinary one. He was in Eden, in the garden of God. And it was his corruption, his desire for absolute power, that led to his downfall. Pride devoured him from within, and he was cast out of the divine presence, cast down to earth, among mortals. These texts not only tell us the story of the fall, but they reveal to us the nature of this being. Lucifer did not fall simply because of pride. His fall was a cosmic event, a moment when heaven and earth collided, altering the spiritual balance forever. And this is where the mystery deepens. The earth was not only the place of his exile, but it became the battlefield where he and his followers would continue their struggle against God's creation. These passages, often read quickly, hide more than meets the eye. They are the prelude to an unseen war, a war that is still being waged all around us. And now that you know the context, prepare to delve even deeper into this story, a story that reveals that the fate of the fallen angels is, in fact, intertwined with our own. But there is something few know. When we delve deeper into the ancient texts and hidden interpretations of Scripture, an intriguing revelation emerges. Lucifer's fall, which many believe was motivated by nothing more than pride, may have been far more complex than we realize. What if what we know of the fall is just the tip of the iceberg? What if there is a much older, more secret story, one that reveals a cosmic battle for more than power, a battle for control of humanity itself? Some scholars suggest that Lucifer's rebellion was not just against God, but also against the role humanity was destined to play in the divine plan. These angels, who once walked in glory, saw the creation of human beings not as something lesser, but as a direct threat to their dominion. Envy, the desire to subvert that plan, may have been one of the deepest factors in the fall. Imagine, once immensely powerful celestial beings, now confined to earth, forced to watch humanity, with all their imperfections, taking the role they considered rightfully theirs. And then, with their wings clipped and their power limited, what would they do? They would try to corrupt this creation, to pervert its destiny, to poison what God had planned. These fallen angels may have unleashed a sinister plan, one that aimed not only at our physical destruction, but at something much darker, the destruction of our souls. They sought ways to intervene in our history, influencing kings, empires, and even the events that shape the world today. What really happened behind the scenes of that heavenly rebellion? And what impact does it still have on us? We are only beginning to unravel the deepest secrets of these creatures. What you thought you knew may be about to be completely transformed. And so we begin to delve into the deeper layers of this mystery. Ancient texts, when examined more carefully, reveal details that go unnoticed by many. The fall of Lucifer, as described in Scripture, was not just an isolated event in heaven, but rather the beginning of a conspiracy that spans the ages and touches the very essence of humanity. In the apocryphal accounts, we find mention of these fallen angels who, after their fall, did not simply disappear. They continued to exert their influence on earth, assuming forms, interfering in the kingdoms of men, and in some cases even mingling with humanity. In Genesis 6, there is a brief but disturbing mention of sons of God who came to earth and mated with the daughters of men, producing a race of giants known as the Nephilim. Who were these beings if not the fallen angels themselves, seeking to corrupt the human lineage? These texts suggest that the fall was not the end, but the beginning of a new age of darkness and corruption. These rebellious angels, frustrated by their loss of power, sought a way to regain influence by corrupting the very blood of humanity. They taught men forbidden secrets, dark arts that were destined to remain hidden. And most disturbing of all, it is believed that the forces they awakened continue to act today, disguised, woven into the fabric of society, guiding events, manipulating minds and hearts. They may be behind some of the darkest moments in history, wars, destruction, corruptions that surpass human comprehension. Are you beginning to see the bigger picture? What seemed like a mere celestial rebellion was in fact the trigger for a secret war, an invisible battle that has been raging ever since. And we, humanity, are at the center of this struggle, often unaware of the forces moving around us. And what does this mean for you, for all of us? The answer is slowly emerging, but the mystery still deepens. The pieces are falling into place, but there is much more behind these curtains of shadow. But here's the twist that most people never consider. Lucifer's true power was not destroyed with his fall. On the contrary, his influence has spread, taking on more subtle, more dangerous forms. And he is not alone. His followers, the other fallen angels, have infiltrated the fabric of our world, and continue to operate in the shadows. Imagine for a moment, contrary to what many think, the fall did not represent a complete defeat. Lucifer and his followers are still active, manipulating and corrupting. They have become masters of disguise, adopting forms that humans cannot discern, shaping historical and cultural events for centuries. They have operated in ways that challenge what we know about evil. Not as visible monsters or grotesque creatures, but as invisible influences, whispering in the ears of leaders, fomenting wars, destroying nations, and, perhaps most frighteningly, obscuring spiritual truth. And here's the most disconcerting part. These forces are not just they are confined to the past. They are present now, today, all around us. As the world seems to descend deeper into chaos, division, and suffering, the mark of these fallen angels can be seen around every corner, in every crisis. Events that we believe to be purely human may actually be a reflection of a much larger spiritual battle, in which Lucifer and his followers continue to fight for dominion over human souls. What does this mean for us? That nothing that happens around us is purely coincidental or a matter of chance. We are living on an invisible battlefield, where decisions, influences, and even thoughts are being shaped by forces that remain in the shadows. And most importantly, if everything you believed about good and evil was built on an incomplete foundation, then how can we truly understand what is happening around us? Are we prepared to see this uncomfortable truth, that Lucifer's true power has never been fully eradicated, but merely camouflaged, ready to manifest itself at the most unexpected moments? This is the reality that many avoid facing, but that unfolds before our eyes, whether we like it or not. And the question that arises now is, what will we do with this truth? Because the world we live in is not as simple as it seems, and the forces that shape our destiny are still in play, waiting for the next move. But there is something even deeper and more disturbing in Scripture, something that many go unnoticed, hidden in the margins of traditional interpretation. Some verses, little explored, reveal that the fallen angels did not simply disappear after the fall. They left traces, hidden testimonies that still echo in the pages of the Bible. You see, in passages like Genesis 6, there are mysterious references to a time when the sons of God came down to earth and took for themselves the daughters of men. Who were these sons of God? Most scholars believe that these were the fallen angels, who in their rebellion sought to corrupt humanity not only spiritually but physically, creating the giants known as the Nephilim. These half-angel, half-human beings posed a direct threat to the divine plan. They were not just a physical aberration, but an attempt to subvert God's purpose for humanity by introducing a corrupted bloodline. The destruction of the Nephilim through the flood was an attempt to purge this corruption, but the influence of the fallen angels did not end there. Lesser-known passages, such as Jude 1 verse 6, tell us that these fallen angels were chained in thick darkness, awaiting final judgment. But until then, what exactly are they doing? There are texts that suggest that even in their imprisoned state, they continue to exert influence over the world, through more subtle, more enigmatic methods. What if these forces have not been completely suppressed? What if these beings still find ways to interact with the physical world, manipulating events, people, and even entire institutions to accomplish their dark goals? What this hidden biblical evidence tells us is that the struggle is far from over. It continues, hidden from the eyes, but not from the hearts and minds of those who are open to seeing beyond the veil. These verses, these often ignored passages, show that the influence of fallen angels is more extensive than we ever imagined. Their actions are intertwined with the very history of humanity. And while many choose to ignore this truth, it remains, waiting to be uncovered by those willing to look more closely. So the question you must ask yourself is, what other biblical truths have been hidden in plain sight? What secrets have yet to be revealed? Because one thing is certain, the story of the fallen angels is not over, and its echoes still resonate in the fabric of our world. And now that we are beginning to understand the true scope of the fallen angel's influence, it is time to delve deeper into what all this really means for us. These revelations are not just information to satisfy our curiosity, they have the power to radically change the way we understand evil in the world and, more importantly, the role these beings still play in our reality. First, let's expand on the concept we have just explored. The fallen angels are not just waiting for final judgment. They are actively manipulating the spiritual and physical worlds, using tactics that escape common perception. Think of the greatest moments of darkness in history: wars, genocides, unspeakable cruelties. Now consider the possibility that these events may not be the result of human evil alone, but part of a larger orchestration, guided by unseen influences. These fallen angels, with all their supernatural knowledge and power, have not given up trying to distort God's plan. They know how to manipulate men's vanity, greed, and pride to cause chaos. And what's most disturbing is that they have centuries, millennia of practice. Over the ages, they have observed and perfected their strategies, infiltrating all layers of society, whether through philosophical ideas that trigger revolutions or the very power structures that control the destiny of nations. Think of the secret societies, the occult doctrines that emerge in different eras. Could these seemingly unrelated ideas be a continuation of the influence of the fallen angels? Some believe so. The propagation of subtle evil, through philosophies that seem liberating but that, in fact, imprison the spirit, can be one of the most sophisticated forms of subversion. And what can we do about it? Understanding these forces, unmasking them, is the first step. We are not wrestling against flesh and blood, as Paul reminds us in Ephesians 6 verse 12, but against principalities, powers, and spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This completely changes the battlefield. This is not just a visible struggle, but a cosmic war in which we are all involved, whether we realize it or not. These revelations are a call to open our spiritual eyes, to see beyond the veil that covers physical reality. The world we see is only part of the story. The other, more significant part, takes place in the shadows, in the unseen interactions that shape the destiny of humanity. And now that you know more, what will you do with this knowledge? With understanding comes responsibility. Each of us must decide how we will respond to these unseen forces at play around us. For as the battle rages on, our own participation in it is inevitable. And so we come to a crucial point, a personal reflection that we cannot avoid. If these fallen angels, these invisible forces, are still operating in the world around us, what does this mean for your life, for your daily life? Are we, unknowingly, allowing ourselves to be influenced by these forces, which silently shape our thoughts, decisions, and even our destinies? Think about the choices you make every day, the thoughts that seem to come out of nowhere, the doubts and temptations that often seem impossible to resist. Could there be something deeper at play, something you had not yet considered? And more importantly, how might these forces be impacting your life right now, at this very moment? This is where personal reflection becomes inevitable. Because we are not talking about distant theories or ancient myths. We are talking about a real battle, taking place in a spiritual dimension that directly influences the physical world. The Bible repeatedly warns us about these invisible forces, but we often neglect this reality. We live as if all that exists is what we can see and touch, ignoring the spiritual battles that are happening around us. Now, stop and think for a moment. How might these invisible forces be shaping your decisions, your emotions, and even the course of your life? Is it possible that, without realizing it, you are being influenced by powers that want to distance you from the divine plan? Could the doubts, the fears, the impulses that seem out of control actually be echoes of this spiritual war? This is not a question to be answered easily. It is something that requires deep introspection, an honest examination of one's own soul. Because, once we understand that we are in a battle, the most important question we need to ask ourselves is, whose side are we on? You don't have to face these forces alone. The Bible gives us powerful tools to resist them: faith, prayer, and knowledge of the truth. But the first step is to recognize that the struggle is real, that these unseen forces are at work, and that you have the power, with spiritual discernment, to resist these influences. So I invite you to reflect. To ask yourself, what unseen forces are at work in my life right now? And what can I do to resist and protect myself from these influences? Because the battle is ongoing, and all of us, whether we realize it or not, are involved in it. And there is more, much more than we can imagine. We are about to uncover a new layer of this mystery. A second revelation that leads us to an even more disturbing truth: there is a direct connection between the fallen angels and modern events that many of us have never even imagined. Think of all the catastrophes, global crises, wars, and natural disasters that plague the world. For centuries, these tragedies were seen as merely natural occurrences, or as the consequence of human actions. But what if there was an invisible hand, pulling the strings of fate? What if these events were, in fact, part of a plan devised millennia ago, a plan carried out by beings who operate outside of our perception, but who still have a direct influence on our world? These fallen angels, who once walked among us and left their mark on history, have not completely withdrawn. Their actions are intertwined with the greatest events of humanity, and their influence remains hidden in political decisions, global conflicts, and even in the cultural changes that affect our society. The New World Order, secret societies, global financial manipulations, these are all events that, to many, seem like conspiracies, but which may have much deeper spiritual roots. Unseen forces working behind the scenes, influencing world leaders, inciting revolts, and shaping the destiny of humanity. And most disturbingly, there are signs that these fallen angels, these powerful beings, are still influencing what we see in the modern world. From geopolitical power movements to technological advances that defy our comprehension, their presence can be felt if we look with the proper spiritual discernment. But why would they do this? Simple: they have an ultimate goal, an agenda that has not yet been fully revealed. And this agenda is deeply connected to the destiny of humanity, a destiny that, if we are not careful, could be diverted by these forces. As we move forward in this revelation, you will begin to realize that today's events are not just the result of chance or human history, but rather part of a much larger spiritual game, where the battlefield is not just earthly, but also heavenly. And as this happens, the pieces are being moved, preparing the world for something much greater. Now ask yourself, what recent events might have been influenced by these unseen forces? And more importantly, what does this mean for the future of humanity and your own spiritual destiny? The truth is that we are on the cusp of a major revelation. And what comes next could change everything we believe about our place in the universe and the role these beings still play in the grand plot of history. To fully understand what is happening in our world today, we need to go back and connect the dots throughout history. Behind the great events that shaped civilizations and defined the course of humanity, we can see the echoes of a dark influence, an influence that many ignore or choose not to see. Since ancient times, great empires have risen and fallen in mysterious ways. The mightiest civilizations, from Babylon to the Roman Empire, seem to advance with relentless force, only to be destroyed in sudden catastrophes. Epic wars were fought, bloody revolutions changed the fate of nations. And what seemed to be the work of human ambition alone may in fact have been guided by unseen hands, spiritual forces at war, shaping the destiny of humanity in ways we could never have imagined. Think of World Wars I and II. conflicts that left deep scars on the history and soul of the world. Many historians explain these events as merely the result of political intrigue and escalating conflicts between nations. But what if, behind the scenes, these catastrophic events were amplified by a malign influence, guided by an agenda that slowly unfolded over centuries? The Bible gives us clues to this connection. In Daniel 10, we find an intriguing story in which the prophet describes a spiritual battle involving angelic princes, heavenly beings fighting for control of kingdoms and nations. The Prince of Persia and the Prince of Greece are mentioned as spiritual forces that opposed God's will and directly influenced the nations they ruled. If this was true then, why would it be any different now? What if, in the great wars and revolutions, there were spiritual princes fighting in the shadows, influencing human leaders, manipulating global events to further a darker agenda? What this means is that human history cannot be viewed solely through a political or economic lens. There is a spiritual dimension behind it all, an unseen battle that directly influences the course of events. And the fallen angels, with all their power, continue to wage this war in arenas that humans often fail to notice. So when you look at the great events of history, don't think of them as simply the result of human decisions. Consider what may be at work in the shadows, influencing the decisions of leaders, motivating the movements of nations, and even inciting the great conflicts that have shaped the destiny of the earth. History is not as simple as it seems. There is a much older, much deeper battle that continues to be fought at levels that most people will never see. And now that we have begun to see beyond the veil, the question is, how far will this unseen influence extend? And what lies in store for the future as these forces continue to manipulate the destiny of humanity? That is the next mystery we will begin to unravel. What we know so far is just a small part of a much larger plan, a plan that continues to unfold before our eyes. And as we look more closely, something even more disturbing reveals itself. Evil is not just an abstract force, a distant idea working behind the scenes. It is intentional, personal, and has a face, an identity. These fallen beings are not mere formless spirits. They have names, intentions, and, most frightening of all, a very definite purpose. Throughout history, evil has manifested itself through individuals, charismatic leaders who emerge in moments of chaos, leading entire nations to destruction. Think of the great tyrants and dictators of history. They not only ruled with brutality, but seemed somehow to embody a deep, almost supernatural evil. Lucifer, for all his cunning, became a master at manipulating human hearts, finding those most susceptible to his influence, those he could use for his dark purposes. Don't think of evil as just a distant force. It has the ability to manifest itself through real people, those who walk among us. Evil can be personified, it can act, speak, and directly influence the decisions of those who seek power, glory, or destruction. When we look at the great tragedies of humanity, we see clearly that behind every dark event, there is always a guiding hand, a voice whispering in the ears of those who are willing to listen. And this influence is not limited to the tyrants of the past. To this day, the presence of these spiritual beings, these fallen angels, can still be felt, working in the shadows of society, seeking ways to personify evil in new leaders, new ideologies, new movements that perpetuate the destruction and corruption of the human soul. But perhaps the most sinister part of this revelation is that evil can hide behind a mask of goodness. It does not always manifest itself in obvious, grotesque, or violent ways. Often, it disguises itself as light, presenting itself as something attractive, even inspiring, but which, deep down, aims to corrupt and destroy. Lucifer, after all, was the bearer of light before his fall, and he still knows how to manipulate the human desire to seek something greater, twisting that search to his own ends. So, as you reflect on all this, ask yourself, who are the figures who influence the course of history today? What movements, ideologies, or leaders have the power to move multitudes, to change the destiny of nations? And could it be that, behind all this, there is an invisible force, a dark presence, personified in the evil that works through them? Because evil, in its most dangerous form, is not a monster in plain sight. It is silent, subtle, and often camouflaged in what appears to be righteousness. And as long as it continues to act in the shadows, we, as humanity, need to be vigilant, attentive to the signs that this spiritual battle, far from over, continues to be fought around us, at every moment. This is the evil that personifies itself and walks among us, an evil that often takes forms that we would never suspect. Now that you know this, how will you recognize its manifestations in real life? And so we come to the third revelation, an even deeper layer of mystery. What many do not know is that Lucifer's true plan for modern times has not yet been fully revealed. There is a plot afoot, a strategy that has been unfolding for centuries, and that now, in the world we live in, is beginning to reach its climax. Imagine, for a moment, that everything we have seen so far, wars, catastrophes, the rise of tyrants, are merely pieces on a much larger board. These actions have been carefully calculated to move the world toward an ultimate goal. Lucifer's plan, far from being just destruction for the sake of destruction, has a much more cunning purpose: the complete subversion of God's creation, the final separation of humanity from its true spiritual essence. This plan is not impulsive, it is methodical. And it has been unfolding before our eyes without many of us realizing it. Every technological advance, every cultural shift, every global crisis may be a part of this overarching strategy. The goal is not just to corrupt, but to shape the very perception of reality, to lead humanity away from divine truth by offering in return seductive illusions that lead us ever further away from our spiritual purpose. And perhaps the most frightening aspect of this plan is its subtlety. Lucifer does not present himself as an obvious enemy. Instead, he disguises himself as the most appealing ideas, the most tempting solutions to the world's problems. He knows that the most effective path to control is not through fear but through seduction, presenting evil as something desirable, as an evolution, an enlightenment. And this is happening right now, all around us, in ways we often don't even realize. The doctrines that promote moral relativism, the relentless pursuit of power and pleasure, the gradual shift away from spiritual values in favor of a more free and progressive world, all of these may be part of the grand scheme. Lucifer wants not only to rule the physical world, he wants to rule our minds and hearts, making us believe that we are choosing our own path, when in fact we are following the script he has written. This plan, carefully crafted over time, is accelerating. Technology, global divisions, and incessant crises are the perfect breeding ground for its implementation. We are approaching a crucial moment, a turning point, where the forces of good and evil will meet in a final battle for the fate of human souls. But this battle will not be fought only within nations and between armies. It will take place within each of us, in our choices, in our beliefs, in the way we navigate this complex world. And now that you know the depth of this plan, the question that arises is, are you prepared to recognize the subtle traps that Lucifer has placed in his path? Because his true power lies not in his brute force, but in his ability to disguise evil as something good, darkness as something bright. The grand climax of this story is approaching, and we are all involved in it, whether we like it or not. The pieces are being moved on the board, and the outcome of this cosmic battle will determine the fate of humanity and our place in eternity. And now, after all we have seen, we come to a crucial point. How does all this connect directly to your life, to your daily choices, to your inner struggles? The uncomfortable truth is that this spiritual battle is not just a distant cosmic war, it is happening inside you, inside all of us. Lucifer and his fallen angels are not only influencing major world events, but also acting on a much more personal level. The unseen forces we have spoken of are not content to manipulate nations and leaders, they are equally interested in shaping the thoughts and desires of each individual. After all, the conquest of one soul at a time is as important as the control of an empire. Think about the choices you make every day, the small temptations, the seemingly insignificant moral decisions. This is where the battle becomes most intimate and personal. The fallen angels work in the details of everyday life, in the seemingly trivial situations that, when added together, can pull you away from the light and closer to the darkness. For example, have you ever noticed how, in moments of weakness or despair, a subtle voice appears that seems to encourage selfishness, anger, or the search for easy solutions that compromise your values? These are not mere coincidences. These subtle influences may be the invisible nudges of those who still try to divert humanity from the divine path. Now, the more pressing question, how might these invisible forces be shaping your life? Could it be that in moments of doubt, temptation, or suffering, you are being guided by something beyond what you can see? And if so, how can you resist these influences and ensure that your choices reflect what is true and just? The truth is that we are all in a battle, and this battle plays out in the decisions we make every day. What seemed like a simple act may, in fact, be connected to something much greater. When you choose between good and evil, between generosity and selfishness, between light and darkness, you are, in fact, participating in this great spiritual war. And that is why we must be alert. We must seek spiritual discernment to recognize these unseen forces and resist them. This means being in tune with divine truth, strengthening our faith, and finding strength in Scripture. For while these forces may try to lead us astray, we also have at our disposal the power to resist and stand firm. So now that you understand what is at stake, what decisions will you make going forward? How will you navigate this reality, knowing that each choice is part of a larger battle for your soul? This is the question that faces all of us, and each of us must answer for ourselves. The story of the fallen angels is not just ancient history. It continues to unfold in the lives of each of us, every day. And the choice of how to respond to these forces is in your hands. And to better understand how this spiritual battle manifests itself in our lives, let's delve into the stories of those who have faced this struggle firsthand. Stories of ordinary people, like you and me, who encountered unseen forces and endured, emerging on the other side stronger and more steadfast in their faith. Consider, for example, Mary, a woman who lived a simple life but began to realize that something darker was affecting her family. Small domestic conflicts that had previously been resolved quickly began to escalate into bitter fights. Her children's health began to decline for no apparent reason, and a cloud of despair hung over her home. At first, she thought these were just coincidences of life, until she realized that these situations were happening with disturbing frequency. Mary decided to take action. She began to pray fervently, seeking guidance and insight. And the more she connected with her faith, the clearer it became that she was not just battling physical circumstances, but spiritual forces that wanted to destroy her peace. With perseverance, she began to see changes. His family began to heal, the fighting subsided, and a new light shone in his home. Mary had weathered the darkness, and her story is a testament to how faith can reverse even the most invisible influences. And then there is John, a man who had always been skeptical about the spiritual world. He believed that everything that happened was the result of purely human actions. However, after a series of inexplicable business failures, he began to question his assumptions. No logical reason explained why all his attempts were being thwarted, as if something was blocking every step he tried to make. John finally sought counsel from a spiritual friend, who encouraged him to pray and seek divine guidance. Reluctant at first, he began to devote time to spiritual reflection and meditation. And then, something began to change. John began to see patterns in his life that he had previously ignored. He realized that he was being manipulated by fears that were not even his own, external forces that whispered defeat in his thoughts. But with prayer and determination, John began to change his mindset. He regained his focus, his energy, and began to thrive again. What he initially dismissed as spirituality turned out to be the key to his deliverance. These stories are not isolated. They reflect the reality of many who face challenges that seem inexplicable, until they realize they are involved in a battle much greater than they imagined. They show that, despite the presence of these invisible forces, resistance is possible, and victory is real. And now, it's your turn. What do these stories awaken in you? Is there an area of your life where you feel like something is working against you, something that seems bigger than normal circumstances? If so, know that you are not alone. Spiritual warfare is a reality, but like Mary and John, you too can resist, fight, and overcome. Faith, discernment, and inner strength are your weapons. The question is, how will you use these weapons? Because, in the end, it is these personal battles that shape and strengthen us on the spiritual journey. We are reaching the most crucial point in this journey. You have sensed the power of these stories of faith and resistance, but now is the time to take it even deeper. We are about to enter the most intense and revealing part of this narrative, where the pieces finally begin to fall into place. Think about everything we have discussed so far: the unseen influences, the embodiment of evil, Lucifer's grand plan to lead humanity astray. All of these forces at work behind the scenes of this story are not just distant ideas, they are unfolding in real time, impacting our lives, our thoughts, and our actions. And now we are about to reach the climax of this journey, where we will see how this spiritual battle is culminating in something much larger, something that impacts us all. Do you feel that tension building? The sense that we are on the brink of a final revelation? That is no accident. It is because, as in every great story, there is a point at which everything converges, where events that once seemed disconnected begin to reveal a greater purpose. The spiritual battle we've discussed so far is reaching a critical point, not only in the world around us, but also within each of us. We're about to see how the unseen forces and personal battles we face connect to a bigger picture, a cosmic war being waged for our souls. But contrary to what many people think, this battle isn't just about the distant future or the end times. No, it's happening right now, all around us, in our everyday decisions, in our moments of weakness and temptation, and in every opportunity to choose between good and evil. And that's why you need to be prepared. We're approaching the climax of this journey, and the revelation that's coming could forever change the way you view the spiritual world and the role you play in it. The tension is building, and the turning point is about to be revealed. So hold on tight, because we're just a few steps away from discovering what's really at stake in this unseen battle. And when that revelation comes to light, it may not only open your eyes to the reality around you, but it may also inspire you to take decisive action that could shape your spiritual destiny forever. Get ready, because the final revelation is near, and what comes next could change everything. And now the climax unfolds before us. The revelation we have been waiting for, the moment when all the hidden forces become visible, is here. The truth is that the spiritual battle we have been discussing is not taking place in some distant future or just in the kingdom of heaven. It is happening here and now, all around you, every second. What you need to understand is that the real battlefield is not just the outside world, but the very space you occupy. The real fight is taking place in your mind, in your heart, in your daily choices. What the fallen angels and Lucifer want is not simply to control kingdoms and nations, it is to conquer you. It is to turn your heart away from the truth, to distort your worldview, and to subvert your eternal destiny. You see now that this is not just a distant cosmic battle. We are talking about a war that is taking place in every doubting thought, in every moral decision, in every temptation you face. The climax of this story is not some great external event, but an internal struggle that defines the course of your life. Soul. Here is the great revelation: the final battle will not be fought in an open field, but deep within each of us. The real spiritual war is for your soul, and the enemy is cunning. He will not appear as a hideous figure with horns and a pitchfork. No. He disguises himself in things that seem harmless, attractive, even good. He presents himself in your excessive ambitions, in the pride that tries to corrode your humility, in the lust that promises pleasure but delivers emptiness. The moment when this truth is revealed is the most powerful of all. Because suddenly everything makes sense. All the battles you have fought, internal and external, have been part of this great conflict. You understand that every moment of doubt, every thought of despair, was a test, a struggle between invisible forces for control of your soul. But here's the good news: the light at the end of this journey. You are not defenseless. The moment this revelation becomes clear, you gain a powerful weapon: consciousness. Once you recognize the battle, you have the power to resist. Because no matter how much Lucifer and his followers try to divert you, there is something greater, something stronger, that dwells within you. The real battle is spiritual, and with faith, discernment, and inner strength, you can resist and triumph. Now that you understand the game you are playing, the power is in your hands. And that is the great revelation of the climax. No matter how powerful the darkness, the light always has the ability to prevail. The world around you may be at war, but the final battle is yours, and the fate of that fight is in your hands. The decision you make now, the way you choose to live from now on, will define the outcome of this story for you. Victory is within your reach, if you are willing to fight for it. And so we come to the theological conclusion of this journey, the moment when all the internal and external battles align with the biblical promises, offering a clear vision of truth. The great revelation is that although the forces of evil are present, working in the shadows and trying to influence our destiny, they can never match the power of divine light. Remember the scriptures. From the beginning in Genesis to the prophetic visions of Revelation, the Bible shows us that the spiritual battle is not a story of two equal forces fighting for dominion over the universe. No. The victory of good over evil has already been decreed. In Colossians 2 verse 15, we read that Christ, on the cross, disarmed the principalities and powers, triumphing over them. Lucifer's power, no matter how much he tries to deceive and manipulate, was broken at that moment. He and his fallen angels may try to seduce and corrupt, but their fate is sealed. Now that you know that this battle is being fought not only in the physical world but in spiritual dimensions, and you also know that you have a role to play. Most importantly, you have the tools to win. The armor of God described in Ephesians 6 is more than a metaphor. It is a reminder that we have everything we need to resist the forces of the unseen. The helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, the shield of faith, these are our instruments of defense and offense against the powers of darkness. This theological conclusion leads us to a powerful conclusion: you are not alone in this battle. You have a powerful ally, greater than any adversary. God is on your side, offering you protection, strength, and the promise that if you stand firm in faith, victory will be yours. Theology reminds us that the battle, though real and intense, is temporary. Revelation reveals to us the end of this story. Evil will be destroyed once and for all, and those who stand firm will be rewarded. In Revelation 21 verse 4, we see the promise of a new heaven and a new earth, where there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. The climax of this revelation is hope. No matter how hard evil tries, it cannot win. The light will always prevail. And as long as you continue to fight with faith and conviction, you will be moving toward eternal victory. Now, with this understanding, it is time to reflect on your personal journey. You have been called to be a part of this divine story. You have been equipped with the truths of Scripture and the promise that if you resist the forces of evil, you will find peace and victory. The battle may be intense, but victory is already assured. All you need to do is stand firm in faith, knowing that God is greater than any adversary you may face. This is the theological conclusion of our journey. The victory of good is certain, and your soul is destined for a glorious future if you continue to fight the good fight of faith. And now, with the climax revealed, we come to a turning point, the call to action. It is not enough to simply understand that this battle is being fought. You must take action. Knowing that there is a spiritual war going on is only the beginning. What you do with this knowledge will determine the course of your journey. Here's what you can do now. Begin by strengthening your mind and spirit. This does not mean just superficial religious practice, but a deep commitment to truth and light. Prayer is a powerful weapon, not just as a ritual, but as a direct connection to the divine, a way to shield your soul from the unseen influences that would try to divert your path. Study the Scriptures, for therein lie the keys to understanding and resistance. Just as a warrior arms himself for battle, so you need to equip yourself with spiritual knowledge. In Ephesians 6, we are instructed to put on the armor of God, truth, righteousness, the gospel of peace, faith, salvation, and the word of the Spirit. These are not just metaphors, but real tools you can use to protect your soul from the enemy's traps. Also, evaluate your daily choices. Every decision you make is a miniature battlefield. Ask yourself, is this moving me closer to the light or is it dragging me deeper into the darkness? Identify the areas of your life where you are most vulnerable to temptation and negative influences, and actively work to strengthen them. Most importantly, you must protect those you love. Remember that this battle is not just about you. Your family, your friends, your loved ones, they are all on the spiritual battlefield. Share with them what you have learned, help them recognize the unseen forces around them, and together, you can build a fortress of faith and protection. The call is clear, you cannot stand still. Now that you know the truth, it is time to take practical steps to protect your soul and the souls of those around you. Every prayer, every wise choice, every step toward the light is a victory against the forces that would try to pull us away from our divine purpose. So what will you do now? How can you apply what you have learned to strengthen yourself spiritually? Because ultimately, the battle will not be won with knowledge alone, but with action, and that action begins now, in every moment, with every decision. Are you ready to answer this call? The time to act is now. And so we come to the end of this journey, but also to the beginning of a new one. After all that has been revealed, after all the spiritual warfare unfolded before us, the final moment is one of hope. Because despite all the power of darkness, despite the influence of the fallen angels, there is one greater truth that can never be denied: the light always prevails. You are not alone. No matter how intense the battle, there are infinitely more powerful forces on your side. Goodness, faith, and grace are your shields against the forces of evil. And remember, good not only exists, but it dominates. Scripture continually reminds us that God is in control, that love and truth will always triumph over darkness. So when you feel overwhelmed by spiritual pressures or the trials of life, remember this: the forces of good are unmatched. Love, justice, and faith are not just words, they are the most powerful weapons you have at your disposal. Remember that evil may seem strong, but it is limited. It works in the shadows because the light drives it out. When you choose faith, when you choose to live according to divine truth, darkness has no power over you. It is this hope that must guide every step of your path from now on. And here is the final truth: victory is already assured. The spiritual battle may be fierce, but the war has already been won by the one who is the source of all light. Your task now is to walk in that light, living with purpose and truth, knowing that divine strength is on your side. So as you emerge from this moment of reflection, remember these words of encouragement. You are not just fighting, you are triumphing, with every wise decision, with every act of kindness, with every sincere prayer. The battle continues, but the final outcome is already decided. Go with faith, go with courage, and know that with the light by your side, you are never alone. Remember, good will always prevail. And with this certainty, you can face any challenge, knowing that victory is within your reach. Remember, the battle may be difficult, but the light within you is stronger. Keep walking, keep fighting, and above all, keep believing. The future is in the hands of those who stand firm in the light.